All right, we're honored to have Steve and April Smith with us to talk about their life experiences. They are important to us here at the Madison Church and have been for years and have positions of leadership here. And we're going to talk about your racial experiences. We're going to talk about your faith. We want to make it casual but informative to the people that are listening. So we want to know what it was like growing up black here in our community, wherever it was you grew up. You know, talking about school and in your neighborhood and in the church. Just what was it like for you? So either one of you can jump in first. Maybe Steve, since I'm looking at you right now.
Okay. Well, we grew up here in Nashville, matter of fact, East Nashville, and several experiences that I had growing up. But first, let me just say thank you, Dr. Scott, and thank you to Larry Souder and Souder Productions and the Madison Church, because I truly believe this is going to be so beneficial to the church holistically, and so I'm grateful for that. But we lived in East Nashville for several years, and then we were fortunate enough to move to Parkwood, and this was somewhere in the early 70s, and we were some of the first blacks to move in Parkwood. And I remember specifically sometimes we would walk to the store off of Brick Church Pike, and when they were just building Briley Parkway, they would have a big concrete wall there, and people would spray paint on it, "Niggers go home." And so we would watch that every time and look at that every time we would walk to the store and back. And then sometimes people would drive by and yell it or blow their horns. And so that was one experience. But then another experience when I was younger, that was on the negative side. I don't know if this is positive or negative, but I was in the Boy Scouts. And because I was in the Boy Scouts and I was athletic, I could somewhat fight. I was musically inclined. I was so gifted in so many things. My fellow Boy Scouts, one, and I show. She's got the picture. You want to share
have the picture.
They
called him Super Black.
They put on my birthday cake.
He was about 10 years old. They had a birthday cake, and it said Super Black. So he has proof.
They wrote Super Black.
All right. So now we know
I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
All right.
So they looked up to me. You know, I've always found myself, you know, being the first black this.
Like a leader.
Yes,
You've been a leader.
yes. And so
But
that's just...
Back to the negative. I mean, that's fascinating too. I mean, not surprising. Super black. Okay.
Right.
But like when you would see the graffiti and the negative words, and how would you feel? How would you react?
Well, I felt intimidated, and but yet driven, because at that early age of 10 years old, of experiencing, you know, all the negative feedback from society, even at 10, I knew, Dr. Scott, that my life was going to be different. I knew that I was not going to be just confined to poverty and to being consistently stereotyped. I knew at 10 years old that I wanted to wear suits and I wanted to be a businessman, which I find as a defense to those stereotypes.
That's deep. That's deep. But you've become an achiever.
Yeah.
You knew you didn't want any type of life like stuck somewhere.
Right.
And so you've climbed the ladder, I mean, in a good way, to achieve a lot. But then you also say you feel like you almost have to. You have to be an achiever.
Yes. Yes, sir. That's correct.
Or else what would happen?
I'll be in a box because it's all about opportunities. And being black, we're confined to less opportunity and resources. And so as a black man, I feel like I have to do everything twice as hard or better than my white brothers and sisters in order to achieve just somewhat comparable to what I would see them achieving.
And that, on the face of that, that's very unfair. Well,
Yeah.
not just on the face of it. The reality is that is very unfair. So, super black.
Yeah,
I mean, you almost have to be.
yeah, exactly. That was deep.
And he
That-
touched on the way he dressed. I hope I'm not going too far, but that is part of why he dressed the way he does. And people comment on it so often, but that gives him, I would say, a foot up or helps him to stand out a little bit more. You said if he didn't stand out, then what? You would be lumped into this pile.
Right.
You know, it is just a way to stand out, be super black. I know, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's interesting from others I've talked to, they want to blend in other minorities in order to kind of, well, hide or be safe, or, but you want to present yourself in the best light, in an outstanding way, and you're not well, I was about to say you're not afraid. You're not afraid,
Well,
but there are times you are afraid.
that's true. Yes, sir.
'Cause we-
Yeah, I can't help but remember in college, I met this young white guy. I was an older student at the time. And we were walking to class, and I'll never forget one day, and I can't even remember his name, but he looked at me and he said, "You know what, Steve?" I said, "What's that?" He said, "You're nothing like I was told about black people. You all right to be a black guy." And I looked at him, I said, "And you know what? You pretty cool too to be a white guy."
Yeah, I mean, you turn that moment into something that was okay.
Yeah.
But you took it like a put down, right? I mean, originally.
Well, at the time I didn't, and that's interesting too, Dr. Scott, because it's all about context and the present, the moment, that particular moment. And I knew just by being around this guy, it was just, it didn't have.
You knew his heart.
Yeah. And the thing about it, I guess what my whole life, I've tried to be that one example to where no matter what people think about black people, when they see me, I make them doubt. Well, because even people hearing some of my brothers say, "Well, we don't see you as black, or we don't see color with you," and I'm like, "But I'm right here."
Well, which leads to you. I don't know if I like that phrase either. When people say we don't see color,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
you're in agreement
Yes.
because it implies almost like I don't see you.
You, yeah.
We really don't know what that means because God created us as in different shades and colors. So it's a beautiful thing. We, to hear him say that is just to hear him say that when he tries to prove things wrong in a way, in
By
a
how he
positive way,
lives.
Yeah.
by how he,
Yeah.
and he still does that today. And I can't help but feel a little bit emotional about it because I could feel that in his voice, how he's still fighting that fight. And it's still just as relevant today, that fight, as it was when he was 10 and I was 8.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, fascinating and sad.
It is.
You're still fighting the
Yeah.
fight here in your grown adult years as
Right.
much as at 10 or 8,
Right.
feeling the same burden, if that's the word, or
It is.
responsibility.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Okay, April, what about you? What about your growing up?
Well, we moved to South Nashville over there by Belmont College, close to Belmont College, when I was in the 3rd grade. We lived in a neighborhood that consisted of all white families. There was a big family that lived across the street, about 8 kids. I remember that the houses, they had a fence around their yard, but I remember that they were never allowed to play with us. It's just my sister and I, and I mean directly across the street. And could wave, and we could kind of speak from across the street, but they were never allowed to come out and play with us. But other than that, there was a family that lived down on the corner of our street. We were able to play with them just fine. But the family across the street, we were not. And so we lived in the bubble. My mother, my older sister, and I. And I believe within the Black community, though, we were protected. Before we moved to off Belmont, we were protected by our family. So the people you were around looked just like you. And of course, being young, my grandmother had like about 18 kids, so we had a lot of cousins.
You had a lot of
A
family.
lot of family.
Yeah.
So you can looking back, I can feel that shield that was around us, which allowed us to play and and just live. But once I moved to, off of Belmont, that family thing kind of went away. But that's what I remember most is how I lived there from 9 until I left to get married. And never in all those years were we able to interact with that family who had kids that were our age, the whole time.
So do you remember your feeling about it at the time?
I just didn't understand how, you're a child and you're looking at other children. It's like being on the playground, but the children won't come and play with you. You don't really understand why, but you know that there's something wrong, off. I don't understand. You're looking at me, I'm looking at you, we're waving, but we can't communicate, can't get close to one another.
couldn't
And you
really
don't
connect.
understand why, but that's the way it was. I guess after the years went by, we grew up and we would go play and do with people that you can play and do. You always just keep moving. You never let things stop you. You just always find a way to maneuver around things and make it what it can be. You make the possibilities happen.
That would take a lot of energy, wouldn't it?
It does.
If you're always thinking about how to maneuver
Yes.
around obstacles.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's our
right,
daily
that's
life.
That's right.
That's our daily life.
It's-
Always.
Which I'm not thinking about necessarily in my life. You have to think about
Yes.
how to.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day you leave the house, you have to think about the possibilities of what could happen.
Every
And
interaction.
if you will make it back home. So you're always mindful that something
And I hear that,
could go wrong.
and I believe it. It's just not my mindset. Like I'm not thinking I'm going to get home safely today. I'm assuming I will. But that's not how you're thinking. Like something bad might happen.
Right.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like, what do you think might happen?
Who knows? Who knows?
Anything's possible.
Anything. And it could your fault, not your fault. Doesn't matter. I guess that's the biggest part of it, that you could be innocent, but it still not matter.
And you think about that for your children, your grandchildren, right? That's what
Yes.
That's what stays on your mind. I'm assuming that would be for me too. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
grown adult, and I figure, okay, I guess I can handle things, but I'd be concerned about my family.
Right, right. That's why it's frustrating when they don't listen.
Yeah.
Because they don't know the possibilities just because of their race. But I think that generation is not as intense or concerned about race as we are.
You mean our children's generation
Uh-huh.
or the grandkids?
Both.
I think Trey, our oldest grandson, is starting to hear certain things, pick up on certain things because he's starting to ask questions.
Like, what does he ask?
I can't really remember
Yeah.
specifically, but they play video games online with their friends and that type of thing. So they all wearing these little headphones, and there's conversations going on with the kids, and things are being said to him that he asked his dad, and our son he's told us about it a little bit, but I don't really remember the specifics of it. But you see, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
He's aware. He's
Yeah.
aware.
Because the kids he's playing with, they're predominantly white.
I think so.
And they will say certain epithets, and he's really starting to, like she said, ask questions and picking up on it.
So how concerned are you about them? I would be assuming very concerned about preparing them for life. And I mean, I don't know what I'm asking. I'm just...
Well, let's just take Trey for example. I think from the time they're born, we start to look at them like what they may be faced with. We start preparing a relationship with them based on truth, honesty, openness. We start a level of communication. That was always the plan. Giving him the openness to be able to talk to us about anything, because this day, this may come. And so since he's, 5, 6, 7, we have conversations with him just to feel him out, see how he would act under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And he's proven himself over and over again that he will not sink under pressure. So when you know that, you kind of get an idea that he will have the confidence that he needs to once again maneuver around
Exactly.
situations,
Exactly.
because we know they're going to come. You don't want to have that conversation. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. You don't want to have that conversation. That's the last thing we want to have to do. And the day that will be over, I mean, that would be amazing. But you have to have a conversation, because you have to prepare them when things go bad and they get confused and don't understand why. You don't give them too much, information, but you give them just enough to prepare them that things may happen. You just have to rise above them.
Right. Right.
You keep rising, and that's a fight all within its own.
Right.
You just keep, putting things out there, keep moving forward, keep relying on your faith, keep, things like that. So.
And we've tried to show them by our life how that they can live a good life and be respectable, have character. Listening to you talk, my other grandson, Junior, they know when they come over Nana and Pappy's house, there are certain expectations, and I couldn't help but remember, because we just try to build them up and plant seeds. Junior told us his name is Brandon. He's named after my middle son, but we call him Junior. And Junior's so funny. One time he said, my middle son Brandon, he said, "Daddy wanted to sing with you at church."
You're going to get in trouble for this one.
He said, "But I told him he couldn't sing with you at church dressed like that."
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they look up to you guys.
Yeah.
You're like the patriarch and the matriarch.
I know, that's so scary.
Right, that's true.
That's scary.
That's true.
Well, both of you grew up in large, I mean, well, you had an
Large, small.
extended, you had,
Yeah.
I was gonna say a large extended family.
Right.
And so you learn to depend upon each other, and you have certain people you look up to and you try to model after. And so your family was large, but yours was small.
My
No, hers was
immediate
immediate
family
family.
Yeah,
was
was
small,
small.
but my family was large. My grandmother would tell me, she said, April, now all you need to do is just have kids and go to Sunday school. Have kids, go to Sunday. I'm like, Ma, I don't think I want to have all those kids, because she had like 18 kids. Like, no, I don't want to do that.
Go to
But
Sunday.
those were her orders. But then you think back at that simple life. My grandmother and my grandfather, they were married until they married 80 years or something like that.
Long time.
But, he owned a little property. He owned the property he lived in and the two properties next door. But we didn't know him very well. Even though we saw him all the time, he didn't communicate. All he did was work. He worked, and that's what you knew about him. But she was the one that interacted with all the kids, all the grandkids,
She was
all
the
the great.
relational one.
She
was.
yes.
She was.
She loved her some Steve.
I loved her too.
Good.
So we had a big family.
How has your faith developed and entered into giving you the strength that you have? That's a big question.
Well, for me, we grew up Baptist, and then while we were living in Parkwood, Northside Church of Christ had a bus ministry. It was called the Joy Bus, and they started coming into our community. And so it was 8 of us, but only 3 of us decided to get on the Joy Bus. It was me, my sister, and my brother Jeff, who works at Inner City Ministry. And Joel and Gwen Warren. Joel is like, I call him my white daddy. He took us under his wing. He showed us a different way of living. I got my inspiration from him, and he pushed into us, you gotta go to school, go to school, go to school. And so that's why I chose the school I went to, because of Joel. And so once we were converted to Church of Christ, I realized that going to a predominantly white church was so different. We went to Northside Church of Christ for several years. And my mother, who I love to death, she said, I'll always be Baptist. I don't know why y'all go to that Church of Christ. And now she's a member of the Church of Christ.
Yeah.
But it has made me a stronger person, because I realized that Sunday is the most segregated day, not just in this country, but in the world. I call it Segregation Sunday. And I would often be asked by several, and I know the history why there are segregated all black churches and all white churches, which I understand and have known for years in studying the Bible, that we will all be judged for that, because people are going to find out that in everlasting eternity, it's going to be just no segregation. And so I would often be asked, why, from black members, why do you go to that, even when we were here at Madison, why are you at that white church and not with this black church? And after studying the history of the division and Brother Keeble and all of that, there's still unforgiveness and resentment. And at one point, I tried to bring the black church and talk to some black leaders, but they were resistant to it. And so, we've been listening to Tony Evans, and with all this politic and all this social unrest and everything, and talking to so many people about politics and religion, my faith is so rooted. Tony Evans came up with the term that we have taken on as our own. I used to call myself, Frank, spiritual conservative. But now I'm calling myself a kingdom independent. Because my loyalty is not to a political party and not to a race, but to God. And so my faith means more to everything that we are, that has given us this longevity of marriage and friendship. She's my best friend. Everything, because we both love God, and we've told each other over all of these years, as much as we love each other, it's like every day we together, it's like a party.
It seems so unfair.
We tell each other, as much as we love each other, you know you're second to God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just that's stunning, and I like the phrase kingdom independent,
Yeah.
but just hearing about the depth and the joy in your relationship, that's wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean-
Wait.
I mean,
That's why I work out. So I can keep up with her.
okay. No, okay. I'm actually my mind is going a different. See, I wish I knew you better. I know Steve,
Yeah.
but like we don't get an opportunity to know the women and hear what you have to say.
My faith is everything. Everything. In everything. Totally grounded. I'm more of black and white. My husband is more gray. For me, things are either right or wrong for the most part. And so that helps me in a lot of ways not to struggle in making decisions.
It's clear
either right
to you.
or it's wrong. You know?
Yeah.
He's more gray. So I thank God that he put us together because we're opposite. And just look at our meals. You could tell. Fried chicken, turnip greens.
Macaroni cheese.
What he calls me, the Mugu Queen. You like all this stuff, but if you see us cook sometime, you go, wow, y'all, 37 years, and but my faith is everything. God is everything to me. My relationship with Him, my intimacy with Him is it's the most important thing to me.
How did you get like this?
I would say how life being knocked down. Because when you're knocked down so many times, you have to find something, hold on to something that's solid, that will never change. Never change. Will never lie, will never, leave you, forsake you. Because you find in life that so many other things, even though people have the best intentions, things just sometimes don't work out the way they either say or you plan. And so you take that faith of knowing that God will never change. And one day, all of this will be over. And then you mix that with the relationship that him and I have. I mean, when he says it's a party, it truly
I
is.
can believe that.
It truly is. We have such a good time together. And when people come and visit us, they pretty much say they can just feel it when they walk in.
Like people just want to laugh, right? They want to smile. They want to have.
Exactly.
It's like that
And
when they're around you,
Right.
Because that's what I think, because it's so genuine, because that's what we do when we're together. And when we get around people, and here's a little off the beat
That's right.
thing. Steve and I had the same primary physician, right? Okay. He'll find a doctor and he'll tell me, "Oh, let's go over here." But so we decided one day we would have an appointment together, just a follow up or something. And we were sitting in there in the little room. She said, "Look, now y'all are talking to each other. Y'all are not even talking to me. We can't do this anymore." So, and I say that because that's who we are. We get together and we just start to engage, and it's almost like the whole world disappears. And I think that goes back to feeling like the world is against you. When we first got married, they said they wouldn't last 6 weeks, 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody around us said it would not last.
They were taking bets.
And so I guess, right. So it was at that point, maybe that's when we decided it's us. This is truly going to be us. And God from there, He's blessed us in ways.
So much. Thank God.
He has truly put His grace on our lives. So, He's everything. Everything.
Well, what I'm picking up, you guys, you're together, you're united because of hardships. You said that. It's like the hardships that you've been through has taught you to cling to God.
Yeah.
And that's where you find your strength.
Yes.
And you cling to one another
Yes.
because of hardships.
Yeah.
But that's where you find your strength in one another and in the Lord.
Right.
That's who you are.
Right. That's why he's Dr. Scott.
I'm just reacting to
he's
what
a
I'm
thinker.
seeing sitting here in front of me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's inspirational.
Yeah.
And people need to know you and your stories. And it's too bad we don't get to know each other better in the church. Isn't it? I mean,
That
we
is
can
true.
sit around people forever,
Right.
but not really know their story.
That's and what you said was so on point, because we are family at Madison. We love this church family. But she is a person too. She's not just Steve's wife. And we talk and trying to navigate through all this unrest as a family, as a community. What you said is so true, that as a shepherd, I've been able to have relationships with this church family that she necessarily has not been able to. And one thing that helps you to make it through problems and disagreements is that bond in the relationship. And if we are to grow, Dr. Scott, it's got to be beyond just that hour on Sunday. There has to be extended fellowship on some level, because I think it's imperative that we do get to know the wives and the family and their stories. I mean, realizing that Brother Larry works out like he does, now I can see why he's so jacked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jack means what?
Buffed.
Strong. Yeah.
And I thought about that, the other day. Just that's something I didn't know about him.
Yeah. Well, and that's it about everybody. Once you hear their story, no matter if they might think that they're dull or something. Not that Larry is dull. or anything. No. But when you dig deep into anybody's life, there's so much there, and nobody is dull. Everybody has a story, things interesting to find out about them that you never would have known
that you
otherwise. So yeah, that kind of leads to this last part about, so what do we need to be doing here at Madison to make it inclusive to everybody? And what you're saying primarily, well, we got to get to know each other on a deeper level besides of sitting in the pew,
exactly.
which is good, but that doesn't do it. Something broader than that and deeper than that.
We're having the desire to want to know one another.
Well, maybe that's the key.
Sometimes when you don't acknowledge that there is separation or something wrong or off. I remember when we first started coming into Madison, I think it was 05, and one of my sons came to me. I remember when we were standing in the auditorium on the far right side. He said, "Mama, if these kids ask me one more time to fill my skin and my hair. I mean, it was almost like he was, something they never seen before. And then this is '05, mind you. So you can imagine some of the interactions we've had with members here.
Tell us some more about that, those type of interactions, because honestly, I didn't know myself, like, oh, you're really not supposed to touch somebody's hair.
Yeah.
And me, I didn't know that. I thought I was being funny, but it's not funny, right? It's
Well, what I think when it's an individual thing.
Yeah.
If your wife Diane said, "Can I touch you?" I'll tell her, "Yeah, sure. You love me, I know that." But with my son, you have all these kids coming up to you. "Oh, can I touch your skin? Can I touch your hair?" And then we knew, you're not used to black people, are you?
yeah.
And then that kind of lets you know some of the things you may deal with. If the children are not used to it, then what does that say about the parents? And of course, parents are not going to ask you, "Can I touch your hair and your skin?" But you kind of figure out what you are going to have to deal with, and that goes back to navigation. You have to navigate these waters, because some people. I don't think they mean to be ugly.
I don't think so.
Well,
I don't think
some
so.
people do. They really do. But
I hope
for the
not.
most part, they
Yeah,
don't.
that's true.
But you still, at some point, you want to go to a place where you can rest from all of that.
Right.
But there's no place like that. You can't go into the store, go into worship service. Go. It's always something or someone that's going to remind you that you're either different, not necessarily black or whatever, but you're different. You're different from what I know, but you're the one that's fitting in, that is the other way around. It's like we've often been asked, while attending here, "Why do y'all always sit together?" I said, "Well, why do y'all always sit together?" And people are like, because they just don't think about themselves being, I don't know.
Well, you're always the one having to feel like you're breaking in or fitting in,
Yeah.
making yourself fit in, and that
I still hear to this very day. And I know they mean well, but when they say, "Oh, we're so glad that y'all are here,"
Yeah.
and I've been here
15 years.
and I've been serving as a shepherd, and I'm still getting that.
all right. So how do you feel? I mean, you're smiling right now.
Yeah.
But how do you feel when people are saying that with good intention, but I can see where that would be hurtful?
Well, it's like you said earlier, it's a burden, it's fatigue. And at that point, every statement doesn't deserve a response. You just have to filter things out. But because basically we realize the church family that we have, we're not naive to that. And we love our church family. But if your family, if you have true relationship, it's give and take. It's reciprocal. And we're not asking anything radical to happen, but just acknowledgement and awareness and understand, as black people, we're different, but we need to appreciate our differences. And if you go to a black church, I've heard different references from different people, y'all the black church over there. Somebody once said, "You black people over there, y'all like to talk to the preacher."
Yeah.
And we worship different. And so one thing that could be reciprocal is sometimes including a song or a speaker. Hold the God's unchanging hand.
Uh-oh.
I'll show you the differences. This is how our white brethren sing.
All right.
Time is filled with swift transition. Not over from stand. Okay, here's the black version. Time is filled with swift transition. And not on earth the move can stand. I forget the words. Build your hopes on things eternal. Come on, hold to God's unchanging. Everybody's got to hold to His hand, to God's unchanging. Everybody's got to hold to.
Does it just make you want to bounce?
Yeah, I'm
It's
doing that right now.
What if we did that once?
Yes. Why don't we?
I think that goes back to reading music.
I don't read music, but
And-
I've heard people that are so affluent in reading music, and I've sat in that pew, and it was like a cat scratching the board because the note was so off. And I'm like, somebody's off key, kill me.
What you're saying is just even how we might sing a song. To be more inclusive, we need to be sensitive about that, and we can expand our repertoire in different ways.
Very good word.
If we really, talking about here at Madison, want to be integrated, and we are on some level, but to be more integrated, something as simple as that.
Simple as that.
Well, that would go back to the praise team. And my point I was getting ready to make is that sometimes people can only sing according to reading music.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that black people sing, it has nothing to, some of them has nothing to do with reading music, but it's about the soul.
It's the
And if you don't
experience.
have that, if you don't have the capability to tap into the soul of it and
My
feel
goodness.
that music, you may not be able to sing it that way. So that goes back to diversity. And without diversity, on the praise team, on the leadership, on the eldership, all of that, you may not have that, or may not be exposed to be able to dig deep and sing from your gut, from your heart. Otherwise, you get this. Because you'll notice sometimes, if you look over those, well, you may not make certain songs. We'll look at each other because slow that song down. It's going too fast.
That's too fast.
That's too fast. Feel it.
And she made a good point because I never thought of it that way, but we're not just singing and praising. I couldn't help but think of the slaves.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what they experienced, you could not take that joy. And they communicated with one another in songs.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when we just hear those songs and we're communicating to God and because of what the experiences that we've had, even just for that week, we come to God, and that's
pour it
why
out.
that's
Yeah.
why we can't help but have joy. And I can't help but talk to the preacher. Preach, Russ.
And you reference the slaves. Most people think that slaves sung, on the plantation while they were picking cotton out of joy, but it was not. It was the opposite.
I would
It
think
was
it wouldn't
because
be out of joy.
But
it was they had to communicate something
Well, it was
to the
from
outside world,
sadness.
but something inward too.
Yeah.
it was from sadness,
That too.
and when things that happened on the plantation, more devastating one day to the next, it was those songs that would communicate what just happened.
Yeah.
And that's what they did, and I can't help but think about Martin Luther King Jr. and getting arrested. What did they do while they were in those jail cells? They sung. And I truly believe, this is just between me and God, that God gave us soul because he knew that would be the one thing that could not be taken from us. We cannot be stripped of
Now
that.
that's powerful. I've never had that
I
thought
said,
before.
thank you. See, we
Well,
communicate, we
That's
talk.
deep. That's deep.
And that's something, it's almost like he knew these
Love
things were
Dr.
going to
Scott.
happen to you. But that one thing you will not lose. Nobody can take that away from you. So it's a strong part of who we are.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's talk about the segregated versus integrated churches.
Okay.
What keeps you at Madison?
What keeps us
I'm going
at
to put you on the
Madison?
spot. I mean, why
that's
are
a-
you choosing to be at an integrated church for a
Well, did you hear what she just said?
yeah?
What do you often tell me on a daily basis?
While we're here?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that part.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no.
I was, okay.
Yeah, I didn't just say that
Okay.
part a second ago,
All right.
but he,
Why are
to
you
go
here?
along with your
Mhm.
question, he threw that in. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I believe white prejudice is wrong and so is black prejudice. And I believe even if we went to an all black church, which I've considered several times
Mm-hmm.
and I've thought about it,
Mm-hmm.
even just recently, I was disappointed and let down by what the black preacher did. And you know the situation, but I won't say the name. I went, well, there you go. So I think it's wrong on both levels. And I do not want to be judged because I segregated myself for whatever reason. And I think we're going to be judged on that. And number two, no matter what, I've just grown to love these people on a level from the hospital visits to the weddings, the graduations, the births. And I know everybody not gonna like me, but you know what? I don't want them to. I'm trying to lead people to God. My loyalty is to God. And third and most of all, I believe in God's power and calling. I came to this congregation. I didn't, after serving with Inner City for years, I wanted to just be a plain member. I had every intention to find a pew and rest. I was
Pew.
I was tired. I was exhausted.
You were doing everything in inner city,
I was
right?
teaching, preaching, driving buses, you name it. I was doing it. And so I was the worship leader. And so it wasn't 6 months till somebody tapped me on the shoulder. What was
Dr.
Brother Birch?
Birch, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
we still need to talk about that. And God called me into this position. It was so clear. I never forget, he asked me 3 times, and I always go back to the reinstatement of Peter. When Peter kept being asked, do you love me by the Lord, feed my sheep? Pat Birch, for the 3rd time, he said, will you? And I heard God's calling. And I never forget, and I had this conversation with God. I said, fine, okay, God. You want to keep asking me this? This was my conversation. And it's a wonder he didn't zap me. I said, when these people, we get all these letters from all these people rejecting, wanting to have a black elder, then you'll be happy. I'll do this for you. I'll take the rejection. And how many years later, didn't get one letter.
Right.
And I've been asking them ever
Right.
since. And I tell April, and I tell her, I said, baby, I have not been called to leave.
Right.
And I'm not going to do it. And so that's why I'm still here, because God, he said, now you can take a rest, but you're not going anywhere.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes, you can take a rest. Okay. And what I've noticed, and I've told Steve this, I don't know if I ever said it to you, April, but people just naturally turn to you two, white or black. I've noticed that. They come to you two. There's something that you have. You're able to express what you have where people feel welcomed and valued by you. And they come to you for the prayer requests. I mean, when they're hurting, they turn to you. So just you as people, you have tremendously blessed people here. So you're
So
needed.
why do you think that is, Dr. Scott?
It must. I think it's your
Good question.
personalities. I mean, I'm more inward. You are more outward, and I think people need that. You kind of break down barriers. It seems to me.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Did you know that?
You just told me that.
well, I think
That's powerful.
It's even obvious to Larry. I mean, I think it's obvious to everybody that you break down barriers. You want to.
Yeah.
You talked about the desire. You know, you have a desire to reach out to God and to reach out to other people, and that comes across.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, so as we wrap it up,
Okay.
what else do you think it'd be important for people to know that might help them as they hear about your life? What is there anything else that comes to you?
Well, for me, going forward, like I said, thank you. Thank you for just listening, the communication, keeping the dialogue open, awareness, acknowledgement. You know, Brother Marty said this, and it just stuck to me. We are family. So even if you don't really understand, Marty said, I don't quite understand. And you can't understand the
Right.
black experience.
Right.
You just can't. But just knowing that when our black brothers and sisters hurt, we all hurt. That's always been my approach. When my white brothers and sisters are hurting, I think that's part of the attraction, because I bear that burden with them. I don't want them, when someone is praying and saying, I want to have a baby so bad, I cry with them, and I'm praying. I believe in the power of prayer. I believe when you pray for people and you lay hands on them, they can be healed. We have to really believe what we profess and walk this thing out together. And you might not always have complete understanding, but just let it be known, but I care. I care.
It's the silence that's so hard on us. The silence, you know. But and I know just lately, so many of my sisters would say, "What can I do? What can I do? I don't understand it." It's okay that you don't understand it. We don't want you to have to suffer what we suffer daily. You wouldn't want that for anybody. But it's okay that you just acknowledge the truth that's there, and not to be silent in what you see or what you hear. Feel comfortable asking questions. It's okay. And keeping that communication open is key to any relationship.
Right.
Any relationship. And I think so many times, you know, people want to say things and they just don't know how to say it, what to say. And I've even had to prompt one of my sisters that I love dearly. She's just like, I just don't know what to say. You do. Just say it. Let the words come out. and then the words come out. And it's like, see, it's okay. Just let the words come out. And just look at people individually, you know. Sometimes they're not dressed how you think they should dress. They don't always say what you think they should say. But it's okay, because when God looks at us, we don't always say things the right way.
Right.
We're not dressed, you know, and I'm not talking about clothing in front of him the way we should all the time, but when we look at people and interact with people according to the way God has interacted with us, you will find yourself looking at people in a whole different light, and knowing that we've all sinned and fallen short, all, and when you think about the way my relationship with God, anytime over the years, it's like if I think something about somebody, He'll bring it. I can see this physical mirror coming up, and it just reflects back to me. It's like, oh, okay, well, what about this or that? And I'm like, yeah, okay, you're right. And so when we're interacting with people, you just want to interact with people on an individual level
right.
and just give what you've been given: mercy, grace, love. It doesn't matter who they are because
That's
you
it.
never know who
Sweet
they are.
mercy, yeah.
And I think about some of the people that come in from off the street. I've asked this question: how is it that people in this community, and it's changed over the years, that will go to the benevolent center and get food? They'll walk through this parking lot, but they will not come through these doors. That should not be. That should not be. And so that's a matter of the church. That's the church. We've done that. We've done that. And if I invite people of color to this church, I will meet them at the front door because I know there's no telling what they'll run into. And I go do that to protect them from certain people that may approach them, ask them questions. And it's a shame. I would still do that today.
Well, I'm glad of your honesty, that we need to hear that.
Yeah.
That it may not always seem welcoming to people. I think we like to present ourselves that
Right,
it is,
right.
but in reality they may not feel that, and that's on us.
Yes.
So that's important to share. And important to change.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. Amen.
Yes.
Okay, let's stop here. You've given us a lot to think about, and thank you personally. Just hearing again, I mean, from Steve, I've heard more, but hearing what you have to say, you're just as profound as Steve, if not more so.
More.
So thank you for sharing.
I take a lot of her stuff and make it mine. She'll say, "Did you tell them that was from me?"
No.
Thanks.
That's okay.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks,
Okay.
Lam.
Okay.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.